Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. And I can hear the Spanish interpretation. I need to turn that down. Yes. This is a learning experience. Okay, now we are ready. I just have to find my notes. Okay. Welcome everyone. Good evening. My name is Andrea Dorlester with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development, and I'm the project manager for the Baileys Crossroads Planning Study. I am joined tonight by other county staff, including David Waman, a planner on my team who will be taking notes and monitoring your questions and comments in the chat, as well as Clara Quintero Johnson, my supervisor in the planning department, and other county staff from various departments, including Parks and Recreation, Transportation, Community Health, Neighborhood and Community Services, and the Department of Planning and Development's Community Revitalization section. Also in attendance is Supervisor Penny Gross, your elected official in the Mason District. Penny, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. I just want to welcome everyone for attending. I look forward to the discussion and the questions and whatever follow-up might come as a result of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you for sponsoring this meeting and for and having us here tonight. All right, so the agenda for tonight includes a presentation followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions and make comments. If you could, please hold your questions and comments until the end after I have finished with the presentation. That will enable me to get through all of the slides and share all of the information before we begin the questions and discussion. Thank you. So we are here tonight to talk about an area of the Baileys Crossroads Community Business Center that the Board of Supervisors directed county staff to study for possible changes to the comprehensive plan. The study area is in the Town Center District of Baileys Crossroads in subunit B5. It is located to the south of Leesburg Pike and just to the west of the Skyline Towers. The study area is about 13 acres. Here are some photos of the existing buildings and parking lots in the study area. Photo 1 is a view of the Food Star Grocery as seen from Leesburg Pike with a view of the nearest Skyline Tower in the background. Photo 2 is a view of the restaurants and shops along Gorham Street between the Food Star and Skyline. And photo 3 is a view of the auto body shop and the office building on Seminary Road, where the Bank of America and a vape shop are located on the first floor. And you can see the Skyline Towers in the background. The study area consists of 15 parcels, all commercially zoned in the C8 district. About 4 acres to the south of Seminary Road is developed with the Carousel Court garden style apartments. The plan for this area will not change. The study area north of Seminary Road is about 9 acres and includes the Food Star grocery store, a Filipino grocery, several restaurants, a couple of banks, a gas station, an auto repair shop, auto parts store, nail salon, pawn shop, a couple of tobacco and vape shops, and a small amount of office space. All of these buildings were constructed between the years 1959 to 1965. This slide shows an aerial photo view of the study area taken from an airplane. You can see that the study area is surrounded by residential uses to the east and south and commercial uses to the north and west. So what is the comprehensive plan? It is Fairfax County's general guide to future land uses and development, and it represents the community's vision for the future for different areas of the county. It gives guidance and options for future development. A recommended future land use change does not mean that the county government will develop private property or even that redevelopment will happen soon. The plan is a long-term vision, and it depends on individual landowners who decide to develop their property in accordance with the guidance and the options in the plan. The study area, subunit B5, is in the town center district of Baileys Crossroads, which is planned to redevelop as a walkable, mixed-use urban village. These conceptual illustrations from the comprehensive plan show the planned vision for Baileys Crossroads that was approved by the Board of Supervisors in the year 2010. This map from the comprehensive plan shows the planned building types and sizes for the Baileys Crossroads Town Center. The study area that we are talking about tonight is planned for residential and mixed-use buildings with ground floor shops and restaurants. The buildings are planned to be from 3 up to 6 stories tall. The plan text also mentions that if both subunits B4 and B5 consolidate and redevelop together, buildings may be up to 7 stories tall. So this is what the current comprehensive plan envisions. And here's the map of the subunits again. So you can see that B4 is right next to B5 at the intersection of Carlin Springs Road and Leesburg Pike. So last year, the Board of Supervisors authorized a study of subunit B5 because the owner of the Food Star property is interested in redeveloping to tall apartment buildings with ground floor shops. The Board of Supervisors asked county planners to focus on the area north of Seminary Road and said that there should be no change in land use or density to the Carousel Court apartments, which are located south of Seminary Road. For the part of the study area north of Seminary Road, the Board of Supervisors asked staff to consider a mix of residential and commercial uses with a strong emphasis on parcel consolidation, design, open space, and building heights ranging from 4 up to 14 stories. So based on the Board of Supervisors guidance, the Fairfax County planners created this conceptual redevelopment scenario to envision how the land unit could develop under those parameters, up to 14 stories. So this scenario shows 14-story buildings along Leesburg Pike, stepping down to shorter buildings in the middle of the block, and just 4 to 6 stories along Seminary Road. The primary use is residential with about 1,000 new apartments and the possibility for about 45 townhouses. The first floor of some buildings, especially those along Leesburg Pike, can include space for shops, restaurants, and other retail uses, including even possibly a grocery store. The concept also shows a few new small park spaces and the potential to connect to existing open spaces nearby. Overall, the design would follow the current plan guidance for a walkable urban village with sidewalks on every street and safe crosswalks at every intersection. It is important to know that this is just one possible outcome for redevelopment, and that the entire study area may not redevelop all at once. In fact, only 1 or 2 buildings may be built at first, with others to be built at an unknown time in the future when property owners are interested and ready. So we have some things to think about. If these properties redevelop, how tall should the buildings be? What types and sizes of housing are needed? How much park space is needed? And what does the community need here? County staff has been thinking about these questions and talking about them since last summer, and now we would like to hear.
Wow. We'll wait for Andy to come back. I know what Andy was just about to conclude her presentation. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
So while we wait for Andy to come back, I think she was just at the end of her presentation where she was indicating that those are the kinds of things we'd like to hear from you all. And I think she had one more slide.
Oh, did something happen?
Sure, we lost you, Andy, right at the end as you were teeing off the questions. And I know you had one more slide to give people instructions for.
Yes.
For chat.
Okay, let me
Go
share.
ahead.
So was I on this slide when you lost me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how much you heard of what I was saying when I was on this slide.
Yeah, you were about to let people know now it was time to hear from the community.
Okay. So yes, so now we want to hear from you. And the next slide has some instructions on how to participate in this portion of the meeting. So let me get to that. All right. So for those who would like to speak, please click on the raise hand icon. And you may also enter your written comments into the chat box. You can, if you're on the Spanish language channel, you can write your question in or your comment in Spanish, and the interpreters will read them to us. So some things that we would like to hear. What do you think of the proposed changes? What concerns do you have? And what would you like us to know about this area? And I'm going to stop sharing my slides now so that I can see everyone and see who's talking. So I will do that now. Okay. And I'll see who has their hands raised. All right. So it looks like Saida Mansour would like to speak. So if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
So we had a question about, we have quite a few people here, so we,
612 North is also here.
612 North is also here, 610 is here. So we were concerned about the two banks that are there, because we really like those banks. And Bank of America, and we are able to go and just, walk to those banks. So what happens to those banks? And the small businesses that's there, the Somali market, they have a small business. So are we getting rid of small businesses?
No.
And Shelton?
Any redevelopment will include ground floor retail spaces. So any buildings that are torn down, when new buildings are constructed, there will be apartments above with shops and restaurants and other retail uses in the first floor along the street that people could walk to. Okay, let's see. Grace has her hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Grace? Okay, how about Joe Blaskow?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you all for convening this meeting so we could get some information. It's really appreciated. Two questions and then two comments. In the order of questions, I'm wondering why only considering, if I heard you correctly, the overall comprehensive plan was first adopted in 2010. And so 12 years later, we certainly have not created an area that is village scale mixed use, I wouldn't think, at least judging by the pictures that you had up. So I take it this really is very long-term planning. And in that light, I'm wondering, A, why are we only considering this tiny little parcel and not extending it in the direction of Columbia Pike all the way to Columbia Pike? In my mind, particularly on the Seminary Road side of these properties, not so much the Route 7 areas. This is really an area that could be characterized with the word blight, and could stand for some improvement. And if it really results, that would be great. My second question is, why are the carousel apartments included in the parcel, even though apparently there's not going to be any change made? I fear the unintended consequences when action is taken. So if I heard you correctly, any change in the amendment to the comprehensive plan will not include that particular part of the property. Going to comments, my two comments are.
Well, can I?
Yes,
Do you
please.
mind if I answer those questions and then
Yes.
you can make your comments so I don't forget what your questions were? And I will take the second one first because it's a simple answer. We are looking at all of subunit B5 because in the comprehensive plan, the recommendations are grouped together for that subunit. And in order to plan for any part of the subunit and remove the carousel court apartments from that recommendation, it needed to be within the scope of the study. So potentially a plan amendment would address future recommendations for the area north of Seminary Road and clearly state that the area south of Seminary Road should not change. And that would be the purpose of including it in the amendment. And then your first question, why are we only looking at this small area? And why it hasn't, I don't know if you asked why it hasn't developed yet. So when the plan was adopted in 2010, it was designed around a future streetcar that is now no longer going to occur. There won't be a streetcar from Arlington into Baileys. And so there was some anticipation that redevelopment would occur soon after the construction of the streetcar, but that's not happening. And so we're looking at this study area now because we have an interested landowner who would like to redevelop, but for various reasons, in order to make it work, would like to be able to build taller than 6 stories. And so they asked Supervisor Groves to consider authorizing a plan amendment, and she agreed and the board agreed. And so that's why we're studying just this area. Now, would you like to make your comments?
Yes, please. Thank you, and appreciate the responses. My first comment is Seminary Road, and in particular between Beauregard and Columbia Pike, is at times already overwhelmed with traffic issues. Just this evening, coming home from work, I happened to see an emergency vehicle that was trying to fully expedite, and it took them a full minute to get through the intersection of Seminary Road and George Mason Drive because of the traffic and the way the cars just had nowhere to go to get out of the way. So certainly any development that takes place on Seminary Road needs to envision, I would assume, major traffic planning as part of the development. My second comment is we're also right on the edge of the border between Fairfax County and the city of Alexandria. And that stretch of Seminary Road leading up to and approaching Beauregard has just caught my attention in recent days. There's about 3 or 4 houses up in that area that appear to be boarded up and have been boarded up for a good long while. And I would assume there's probably some plans for development of that as well, which I plan to look into and try to find out what the plans are there. But I would think that the two governments, City of Alexandria and Fairfax County, ought to try to do something that's complementary to each other.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We have several people with their hands up and several comments or questions in the chat. And so I'm going to go through a few more people with their hands up to speak, and then we will get to responding to some of the things in the chat. So Grace, would you like to speak?
Yes, hi, thank you so much. I'm Grace Troni, and I live at Baileys Crossroads on the George Mason side of Seminary Road. And I just wanted to say that just based on the drawings of that particular piece of property, it's not a big piece of property. And this area is already the most populated area in like all of Fairfax County. It's the most condensed area. So to have, you know, mixed use, have 3 different office buildings in that small area on top of multiple residential units, it's where would parking be? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any sort of plan or any sort of like design around actual living. So to me, it seems as though, I mean, as a community,
I'm sorry, Grace, could you please speak a little bit louder? It's difficult to hear you.
yes,
Or maybe move closer to your microphone.
yes, actually, I think me better. Can you?
Oh, much better, much better. Thank you.
I had it Bluetooth. I had an external speaker on. Okay, so this area is one of the most congested or the most populated areas, concentrated areas in all of Fairfax County, if not the most concentrated area. I think there's about 12,000 people already. Having this small area have a design that has 3 different office buildings and then multiple residential units on something that has maybe, you know, a small strip mall and a grocery store, it just seems like a lot of development and no planning for any parking. It doesn't even seem realistic. And as a community, we don't have a lot of clout, it seems like, anyway. And so that should add, there should be more attention to Baileys Crossroads, especially since there's been this wonderful planning going on for 10 years, but it hasn't happened at all. And so maybe a little more clout to, residents and to the community itself will help with crime and all of that, because this is all an area where MS-13 is and where crime is, there's a lot of crime. And businesses there have been crying out for a long time.
So to address your question about parking, first of all, you mentioned some new office buildings. We're not considering new office buildings. It would just be residential. And the parking would be in garages below and within the buildings. So there would be ample parking per county code for the residential and the retail uses. They just wouldn't be surface parking, would be in garages. Okay, thank you. So
Andy,
yes.
this is Penny Gross. May I
Okay.
please add to this? I think we need to make sure that everybody understands. We're talking about the potential for a plan amendment. We're not talking about a rezoning or special exceptions. And some of the issues that have been brought up actually get addressed in a rezoning application, which gets extremely detailed about where the parking is going to be, how many places we have to have parked, what the size of the units, all of that. We're not that far along. This is right now a report on what the staff has determined as part of their research for a plan amendment. So I know that folks are very interested in what is it going to look like, but we really aren't nearly there yet. There'll be many more steps. And so I want to make sure that folks are not getting, sort of wrapped around what the model looks like of various buildings. This is really trying to figure out what the appropriate uses on that acreage.
Right.
And then once that plan amendment, if it gets approved by the Board of Supervisors, then the owner of the building or the owner of the property can come forward with proposal to rezone the property.
Right.
So we're not nearly there yet. And I wanted to also mention Mr. Joe had said, why not go all the way to Columbia Pike? We have a plan that was done some time ago. The owners of those properties have not been at all interested in developing. Here we have owners who are interested in redeveloping, which is why they've come forward with this request for a plan amendment. So I hope that helps folks understand a little bit about just what it is we're looking at here. And the next steps are many of them. And this has not been presented to the Board of Supervisors. It's being presented to me right now, but it's not been presented officially to the Board of Supervisors at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gross. And I would like to confirm, I saw a question in the chat. There has not been a rezoning application submitted at this time. We're just working with conceptual designs or conceptual potential plans. And it's important to remember that this land, these properties are already planned in the current comprehensive plan for potential redevelopment up to 4 stories. And the thing that we're looking at is whether additional height should be considered. And that might provide the potential for more housing. Clara, did you want to say something?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, it's you said 4 right now in the plan, it's currently 4 to 6 stories with a possibility of even going up to 7. Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say? 4 stories?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Up to 6 stories and possibly 7 stories. And now we are considering possibly going up to 14 stories. So I've had, there's another note in the chat from our interpreters. If everyone who is asking a question or making a comment, if you could speak slowly like I am now, that would assist them in providing better interpretation services. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Andy. Now might be a good time just to throw a couple of questions in from the chat. If that's
Okay.
These might be questions that other people have. We received some questions about consideration about traffic, especially during rush hour. on Seminary Road. Some people have indicated or have asked about how that consideration would factor in, and also about noise related to those roads.
So would you like to call on someone from the Department of Transportation to address those questions? Is that what you're getting at, Clara?
Tim
I
Kutz is
see.
on from DOT. I can jump in.
Thank you, Tim.
Sure, thank you. In terms of assessing the traffic, yes, we would be doing what's called an operational analysis. And so that wouldn't just look at traffic in terms of the vehicular throughput on a lot of these roads and the delay to vehicles. But I've seen some comments in the chat about accommodations for pedestrians, accommodations for cyclists, and thinking about how transit is going to be used on this corridor. Route 7 is planned for BRT in the long term. So we would be looking at that, considering how we can not only improve traffic in terms of the delays that people see on these various roads, but also how we might enhance the pedestrian experience and enhance the bicycle experience for folks, get more people, encourage more people, that is, to use those other modes, walking and biking, because that's really what we look for in a mixed use development. We want people to feel comfortable, for example, crossing Route 7. So we'll look at all that. We'll take a multimodal approach and take all that into consideration when looking at this application.
Clara, did you want to take another question from the chat?
Sure. There's a question about how redevelopment in this area would work in conjunction, essentially, with surrounding development, especially in Skyline.
So that's the kind of thing that we look at during the rezoning process. Right now, during the comprehensive planning process, we're looking at appropriate uses, density, which means, say, how big the buildings could be, how tall they could be, how many apartments there could be, what other kinds of uses, what other recommendations we might make, say, to include parks or other public benefits. And then the details on how the roads and the sidewalks and the trees that are planted and where people park, all of that gets worked out during the zoning process. And that is another public process with opportunities for public input that is separate from this process that happens later if this plan is changed and someone comes in with a zoning request. Okay, I see that someone named Skyline Square would like to speak. Skyline Square resident, would you like to speak? Okay, how about Brittany Martini?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to comment. I work extensively with the population surrounding this area, specifically doing emergency food. And I just wanted to put into, please, while you're planning and looking at the redevelopment, to consider the population who is low income in the area and who does need to have walkable access to a food grocery store similar to the Food Star. Currently, the nearest options are Giant and Target, which are rather expensive. So I know it's a good plan and the Food Star is going to be revamped, but we do have a very large community who is food insecure. So please keep that in mind with the plan developments. And yep, thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Kevin Cleaver, would you like to speak?
Yes. I and my family behind me live on Paul Street, just to the south of the development area. And I associate myself with some of the comments that you've heard already, but let me try to be specific and clear. The first question is, what is your prognosis with respect to timing of this? Since you have a potential developer, you probably have some idea how long this will take. That's the first question. Second, living in a community right literally 50 feet from the border of what you're proposing, my first reaction was negative, but I spent all day reading the plans. It took me a day to get through. It was quite interesting. Very well done. Congratulations. And I'm much more positive about the plan in the area under development. My concern, in addition to the amount of time that this is going to take, are two. The surrounding communities. I've been reading this chat box and I have to associate myself with the issues that are being raised. And maybe this is more for Connie Gross than for the planners. We have a crime problem here in this area, a trash problem. I'm on the neighborhood watch in the Somerset Manor community. And I can't tell you the number of times I've been threatened by people who are misbehaving. We have drug traffickers. We have sex in the park. We have apparently, I haven't seen this, but I've been informed by one of my associates, a house of prostitution in the neighborhood. And this is not being dealt with. So why is this relevant to this discussion? It seems to me that any development should start by solving the immediate problems of the community that lives here. Yes, the development is almost inevitable, and your plan looks pretty good, but why not start immediately? And Penny, this is more for you, by enforcing the restrictions on these kinds of things. There should not be a house of prostitution in a residential neighborhood. There should not be drug trafficking in our parks. There should not be people coming already from the apartments, the high rises across the street of Seminary Road to Chambliss Park and to the parks that we have in our neighborhood, threatening residents after the residents called them out on bad behavior. So that's the question. Why not stagger this by solving some of the local problems? I see the chat box now is full of these local problems first. And maybe the developer will be even more inclined to come here when he realizes that something is being done in our community to solve these problems. Last question is during the construction period. This will be a long period. The traffic is going to be worse. The trucks, the noise is going to be worse. So what are the mitigation plans for the community surrounding this development area to reduce the additional negative impacts during the construction period? My guess from looking construction around here is that this is a period of 5 to 7 years before all of these plans are fully implemented. Now, that's a guess. And that's going to be negative on the local community or the surrounding community during that period, even though at the end of the line, it's probably going to be positive for us because, as you say, you'll get rid of some of the blight and we'll have more facilities. But it's that interim construction period that I'm concerned about. So what is being done for the community surrounding the planned area? Penny, what are you doing to solve these problems that are escalating? We have pedestrians being run over on Seminary Road.
Yes, we do. And I have been screaming about that for well over a year. If there is a prostitution house on Danny's Lane, this is the first I'm looking in the chat. This is the first anybody has told me about it. If you have specific addresses that need to be turned into code compliance or the police, please let my office know about it. I do not have eyes in the back of my head. I do not know when things are happening necessarily unless somebody tells me about it. So please give me chapter and verse. I need the specific addresses. I need what you see going on, what you suspect, and the time of day that it happens. I get that from a lot of my constituents. I have not been hearing from Sunset Manor about this particular issue. There are a number of things that we are doing with the police, and we have a brand new police captain. I am going to show her around. She's familiar with Mason District, but we plan to do a ride along so that I can show her where some of our specific locations are. And I think that this needs to be, whatever happens, what you're talking about is something that needs to be addressed on a regular basis with the police. Let's, invite the new captain to a Sunset Manor Civic Association meeting. I know I've been to your meetings in the past. So you need to do that. You need to connect with the police. We can get you folks who, the regular patrol officers can come by and talk to you. But there is a lot of work going on that is behind the scenes. We're working with VDOT to improve intersections for pedestrians. I don't want to go into a lot of detail here because we're really focused on this proposed plan amendment, but I do want to let you know that much of what you've talked about gets addressed for construction and so forth. That gets addressed at the rezoning point where they go through rezoning, we indicate what they need to do, they go through site plan, and that's when they work out where their construction traffic is and so forth. So you're way ahead of this particular situation right now. It may be 5 to 7 years. That would be a surprise to me if it was that fast. Quite often this these things go very slowly. Remember, this would be a multi-million-dollar investment. So you need to have, in years past, working with developers, quite often it takes them several years to get all the investment lined up when it's a multi-million-dollar proposal. So I just hope that helps a little bit.
It does. If I could just intervene, that's comforting, and the time scale, you're right. I mean, 5 to 7 years is probably optimistic, but it still doesn't address my point totally, Penny. And that is, why not start in a staggered way, like next week, to seriously solve some of these problems? Our community association has met with police. I have met with police. My neighbors have met with police. Nothing is done. The situation is worse. It's getting worse by the day. So stagger this, help the community to solve. Well, you're suggesting that you're ready to do this, but to solve some of these problems, it'll make it more attractive to the developers to not have the mess that's being described in the chat session. Just look at this chat session. It's amazing.
Well, I am seeing the chat session, and I am disappointed by a lot of this because there's been a lot of work done and a lot of work going on that apparently people are not aware of. But I'm happy to have a conversation with the new police captain tomorrow and see what we can do. Again, this can be what you're suggesting can happen right away. It doesn't have to wait for any of this. I don't know what the plan time is to bring this proposal possibly to the Board of Supervisors, but it's probably going to be later this year. So a lot of and also come to the Citizens Advisory Committee at the Mason District Station the first Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. The police captain and the police and the assistant commander will be there. It's open to the public. We get lots of people at that. That's a good place for you to raise these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a lot of people with their hands up and a lot of comments in the chat, and we want to get to them all within the next 45 minutes. So let's see. The next person I see in line with their hand up is Jeffrey Barlow.
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. A couple things. And I think I'm going to piggyback off of the gentleman who just spoke. I am in favor of the proposed plan, but in the interim, there are things right now that the county is ignoring. And the same thing he had said too is, in order to bring a quality developer or developers and businesses that are of that will attract decent people, we're going to have to do some things to lure them in. Number one, the back of Seminary Road is behind us, is not well taken care of. Part of that is during the summer, spring, when the median strip, the grass is up to your ears. Nobody takes care of that, and that's county property. Another thing is we have adjacent to us on Skyline Square, we have a park that's really not taken care of as well. It's cut. There's no one regularly picking up over there. The grass gets cut when it gets cut, and there are serious, there's crimes and drugs being traded over there, number one. Number two, there's a shopping center on the other side of Route 7 that includes PNC Bank and Giant and all those. The trash where the bus shuttle is on King Street or Route 7 was overflowing. And it was so bad, and in the bus shelter, cardboard is piled up in there. Someone is sleeping in there at night, and there's a grocery cart in there with cardboard. So I took it upon myself to stop my car, park the car, and call the management company, who happens to be in New Jersey, and ask what the hell is going on. The gentleman said, well, we have a property manager who comes occasionally, but the trash, sir, of which you're speaking does not belong to us. It belongs to the county, and we will do it as a service one time, but the county needs to start picking up and looking at those garbage cans. I can't hear you, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I've had a request for you to speak a little bit more slowly for the
Yes.
translators. Thank you.
I will. I'll go back to this. Now, this is not part of the proposed plan, but when we're talking about bringing new developers, quality developers and quality businesses, we can't have a situation where the county is not picking up trash where it's supposed to be picked up. Okay? I talked to the owner over there, and they said, we clean up where we can, but you need to be contacting the county because the bus shuttle is not being cleaned up, and the trash can along that road, they said, it's not ours. We'll do it one time gratis, but that's up to the county. Number two, you've done no favors to anybody, and it has to go somewhere. But whether you're going to rezone or do anything further down Seminary Drive, you've already put in a homeless shelter. Okay? That has brought a totally different element. Now, people have to, I understand, and I care about the issue, but we're not being given the fair handshake, the fair shake of how are you going to, you have a great plan going forward. And like I said, I'm all for it, but how do you bring quality businesses and developers when you've got down that road, bars trouble's going on down in those bars. There's a homeless shelter, and I don't know who's supposed to clean up down there, but more often than not, right along that stretch, it is littered. So I bought here in Skyline Square. I'm on the board here. I've been here almost 5 years. I want to stay here, but what people are starting to say is we're concerned, not right now, but going forward, if some things aren't taken care of, we're afraid that our property values are going to go down and taxes are not. And in summary, a couple of years ago, Skyline Towers was managed by a different entity. The building was in terrible repair. There were all kinds of things on the balconies. The garbage was everywhere, the dumpsters, whatever. It got so bad, members of our association owners here came to the board and said, we need somebody to speak up to the county about this. So it was not from the board. I volunteered to do it. And we had about nearly 100 signatures here about addressing the property that was adjacent to us, if you will. I delivered it by hand to Penny Gross and didn't hear anything. So when I called her again, she finally called back and said, really, there's not much I can do. So we have almost 2,000 persons living in this building. We're paying our fair share of taxes, and we want representation. We want a cleaner area. We don't want median strips on Seminary Road with weeds up to the chin, and we want a safer, cleaner park over here. Another thing in terms of traffic backup, I've had many people, some who live here and some who don't understand why the school buses in the morning and in the evenings, do not pull off into the developments rather than backing up traffic. When the school buses in the morning are picking up students and dropping off, they're dropping them off on Seminary Road, and traffic is backed up beyond. So like I said, it's a great plan. I give you kudos for that, but we have some things to be done now that maybe we're already paying for and we're not receiving those services. Thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey, thank you so much for your comments. All these
Andrea,
comments
may
will be
I- may I-
considered.
May I
Sure.
respond just very quickly? The grass and the medians, that's not a county responsibility. That is a VDOT responsibility, the state agency that takes care of our roads. If you have an issue, let my office know. We will forward that to VDOT. The Skyline Park issues, I've already been talking to the Park Authority about that. And the bus shelter trash, interestingly, you should mention that. That also is not a county responsibility. That is the responsibility of the Metro system. And when I met with the general manager of Metro last Thursday, I raised that issue specifically with him. So if you can get the specific locations to my office, we will turn it over to Metro. Thank you.
Ma'am, why don't you send someone out, rather than putting the burden on me, send someone out from the county to find those locations, and then you can directly let VDOT or whoever know.
We appreciate when the people who live in the neighborhood can give us the information because you know the rhythm of your community. Thank you.
Yes, but ma'am, I did that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you ignored that.
So I think I'd like to, I think the issue has been raised and
Yes, I'm fine with
We'll
that. But what I'm saying is, don't make suggestions to me that you're not going to put the work. Like I said, I'm not going to take this further, but what I'm saying is we are asking for it. We're coming to the county and it's not getting done. So let's stop putting the onus on the owner or the resident and put it on the county.
Okay.
If the county doesn't think it's theirs, then pass it along to the next. The county, we live in the county, we're paying taxes. You're our representatives. So I can't do any more than I did 2 to 3 years ago where nothing happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Although I'm a county planner and I can't address the problem of trash, I hear all of your comments. We're recording it all. We'll make sure they get forwarded to the right people. So Clara, do you want to take some questions from the chat?
yeah. And I am back like half an hour ago in chat, so I haven't had a chance to go to some later comments, but I'll try to hit some of them that haven't been addressed. One question has to do about the housing market and impact on property values. And I think what we do know is that in Fairfax County and the region, there is a need for more housing and all different kinds of housing types. So we haven't identified that there is an oversaturation of housing. And that does affect the cost of housing for people and just having market rate affordable housing. So in that sense, the cost of housing has continued to increase. And one part of that is that there is a shortage of housing. Another question had to do with undergrounding of power lines. And I would say that with any new redevelopment, at least for the property itself, any lines on where that redevelopment would be happening would be we would look for ways to underground those utilities. Let me see. What community resources will be included, like recreation, public services? Andy, if you heard any comments from county staff about that.
So what we're looking at with this planning effort is to ensure that any development growth is offset by public benefits within the development to meet the needs of those new residents, such as park spaces, on-site amenities for the residents. If there are other public benefits that you have in mind that you think are needed in this area, we would love to hear that. You can put it in the chat, you can email it to us. We will be sharing our contact information at the end of the meeting and possibly in the chat soon, if my colleagues can assist with that. We have a survey up on our website where we would like you to visit the website. You'll be able to rewatch the video from this meeting later this week. And you can click on a button to get to the survey. And it's just 3 short questions. You can share your thoughts and ideas with us that way. Or you could send an email to me, or you could call the office and speak with a planner. So we would like to hear your ideas, and especially if we run out of time this evening, I don't want anyone to think that that's the end of this process and you won't have a chance to speak or share your thoughts. We're still listening, and we will be at least until the end of February. Okay, would Alina, Monica, and Tochi like to speak?
Thank you. Thank you for giving the floor. I actually have to connect to a different call, but I'm very happy to, first of all, we are well community and revitalization of this community. It has to be done though in a very clear manner, and I support very much the comments made by my colleague and neighbor, Charlie, but also Kevin Cleaver. I think we have serious issues, and I volunteer on the board Skyline Square as a community advocacy committee, and we've done surveys of the issues that are faced with this community in terms of the zoning for nightclubs that attract and drugs. Shooting. We have surveys that have shared with the Office of Penny Gross and Mentors. We have met with Captain Adcock in several instances. The problems are ongoing. We are not going to actually every night. And I wonder, you know, it's a community that's very nice. We want to revitalize. That's great. Supportive of that. However, we do need to make a very clear effort to address ongoing before we invite somebody else over, before we invite, you know, new communities that can then be faced with the same issues that we are faced, and we don't have any solution for it. So I'm happy to follow up again. Of 400 people that have taken this survey, identifying the problems that this community is faced with. They're very serious. They're not to be ignored. Yet we've been pushing and contacting, which have to go and make it public. But you know, we want to make sure that our representatives hear us, give us, and all these voices that you see in the chat, in the this meeting you've put out, which perhaps should include more questions than just how do you like it here. I think they should and need to
I'm sorry, Alina, you're breaking up. But maybe if you have further things to share, you could type it in the chat. You were freezing and it was hard to hear you. So let's see. Skyline Square, are you able to unmute yourself? Mary, can you speak? It looks like you've unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. I apologize for that technical difficulty. Okay, how about Clyde Miller?
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. I'm
Okay,
sorry,
let
Clyde, can
let
you
the
wait?
other
I'll wait.
person go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, Mary, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Everyone has mentioned similar issues, so I just wanted to echo that the traffic is a huge concern, especially for pedestrians, and I contacted to try to get additional lights on the crosswalk, but I was basically ignored and I had to go through several agencies. I tried to contact regarding the flooding of the park each year, and I was again referred from agency to agency and basically ignored. Also, the area that Joe and others mentioned between Carlin Springs Road down to Columbia, between Leesburg and Seminary is very problematic. There's huge groups of people just hanging out, drinking 40 ounces and threatening passersby, drinking other liquor, and just, it's walkability is laughable. This area could be very walkable as there are great, things to access, but, when people are afraid to even, go to the park or go outside, it becomes, ridiculous. And then parking, let me see, I wrote some notes here. The food store, grocery store is one of the affordable stores, which a great number of people use. I mean, if you go in there any day, it's very crowded. And I don't see that kind of affordable market being replaced in a ground floor shop. We've seen ground floor shops in this area already like going out of business, Panera. So yeah, amenities would be important, and dealing with the crime, or I don't know if you would call it crime, but the general population of people with nothing better to do than harass, pedestrians in the area. Yeah, so those are some of my main concerns, and I tried to post the concerns in the chat so they can be referred back to. And I would really appreciate getting the office contact for the official who was speaking, who mentioned, please contact my office, and for the other meetings about the community that were mentioned, so that as a community, all of us are obviously concerned about these issues. Maybe we can start addressing them in those forums that are available that we are perhaps not aware of. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate your comments. And we'll have someone post the contact information in the chat for you.
Thanks.
Okay,
And
now,
sorry I spoke fast, but all those are comments written in the chat. So hopefully
okay,
the translators will do okay.
thank you. Now, Clyde, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Just a comment about plan language, new plan language for the area south of Seminary Road. I understand that language for that area would be included in the new plan language, but there are no specific development plans for that area yet. That area abuts the single-family homes to the south. And in front of that area, in the area that is now has specific plans for redevelopment, north of Seminary Road, that area north of Seminary Road would be townhouses. Looks like 4-story townhouses, perhaps. That the area south of Seminary Road should taper down to be compatible with the single-family homes that surround it. That should not be an area for 6-story or 8-story buildings. It should be a clear recommendation in the new plan language that area tapers down to be compatible with the surrounding residential development. That there was a requirement at one time in the zoning ordinance that developments taper down to be compatible with adjoining. That went out with ZMOD. So it needs to be a recommendation in the new plan language. Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde Miller, for your comments. Would Saida Mansour like to speak? Or was your hand up from earlier?
Hi, I have a question regarding the apartments and that are going to be built. Are these going to be built for sale, or are they rentable? So that makes a big difference as well in community. Are these condos? Are they apartments? Are they for sale or for rent?
So
And the
the
gas station as well.
thank you for the
What happens-
question. The comprehensive plan does not typically indicate whether multifamily units will be for rent or for sale. That is a decision made by the property owner and the developer. We can plan for the housing type, the unit size and type, and the building size and height, but not whether it's rental or for sale.
That's kind of important because of there's a difference between condominiums who are rented, that's like a residential, where people are it's more like having a house, right? Whereas a person who's renting a condominium or renting an apartment, that's a completely different different type of people. Right. That's number one. Number two is that what happens to the gas station that we have. The Shell gas station is very helpful for us to get this right here. So it's easy for us to get to. So what happens to the gas station?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, the plan, it's a guide and it gives options to landowners, but the land won't redevelop if the property owner is not interested. So the gas station may likely just remain as is. That's the kind of use that typically doesn't go away. I can't say that it would never, but again, it's up to the property owner. And today, as the existing comprehensive plan stands, that property could redevelop up to 4 to 6 or possibly 7 stories, and it hasn't happened yet. So it's just a matter of when a property owner may be interested. And speaking of property owners, I did want to mention that Mr. Hong, the owner of the Food Star, is here on the meeting, as is his attorney, Keith Martin, and was wondering if, Keith, if you would like to say something about your client's plans for apartments or condos, just to address that last question. If you don't have an answer to that now, that's fine too, but I thought I would give you that opportunity. I think you're still muted, Keith.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We're ready to go forward, and we think this is an exciting proposal. And I know Supervisor Gross is excited about it too. So happy to answer any questions.
It looks like someone named DW has their hand up. DW, would you like to speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. What is the projection for, there's a lot on here about the BRT. What is the projection for the timeline on this BRT? I think that could affect some planning here.
So BRT, for those who don't know, is Bus Rapid Transit, and I will let my colleague Tim Kutz from the Department of Transportation speak to that.
Sure. So thanks for the question. That the BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit System, is planned for Route 7 from Tysons to Alexandria. And they're really in the early stages of planning that right now. Right now, they're looking at the segment from Tysons to West Falls Church Metro. So this portion of the BRT system, closer to this site, that is, would occur much later. So it's more of a long-term planning horizon than any time soon.
Okay, I had heard somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 19 years. Is that fairly accurate?
It could be. It could be slightly less. It could be slightly more. Again, it's hard to say with something that's kind of so far off into the future when it might occur. But a lot of that has to do with sort of the surrounding development, how successful the first phase of the bus rapid transit system is. So it's hard to say exactly when, but that's a fairly good estimate.
Okay, thank you. And then a non-transportation related, or I guess it could be, but just to the east of this proposed subunit comprehensive plan is the 5 skyline towers that are being redeveloped into residential loft type thing. How many units are in those, total units are in those 5 skyline lofts?
I don't think I know. Clara, do you know?
If Liz is here, I think Liz Haig.
Liz Haig, are you here?
I am. Let me pull this up here. I'll look it up for you. Just a moment. So there's 2 developments going on. They're both repurposing of office to residential. And the skyline buildings 1, 2, and 3 is up to, well, they're live work. So they could live there, they could work there, or they could do a combo, but there'll be about up to 720 live work units out of those 3 buildings.
And the other 2 though,
and then the other 2 are, shoot, this doesn't have the number here. I think I want to say it's up to around 500. So something like that.
Wow.
I'll have to look it up. I can look it up while you keep meeting, and I'll get the exact number.
Okay, yeah, that's going to be a huge consideration for planning purposes next door. That's an extraordinary amount of residential units. Okay, and my final question, how much retail is in the existing area that's being looked at right now? Or commercial, what is the commercial square footage?
Okay, it's a good question, and I have those numbers. I just have to find it.
Great, Andy. And while you are looking for that, I think I'll just try to address some of the other questions that are in the chat.
Okay.
We'll be far behind on those questions. One comment.
So am I going to get an answer on that, or?
Actually, I have it here in front of me. I can answer very quickly.
Okay, good.
Currently, there's about 100,000 square feet of commercial uses existing in the area.
Okay.
The proposal would actually reduce the amount of commercial use and increase.
That's a fear. Yeah, with increasing so much residential and, sort of decimating the retail, even though, we've survived, retail online sales, but the commercial is thriving in that area. So that's going to be a huge concern in planning and moving forward, especially with the density that we're looking at Skyline and that as we're considering this. So, and I'll stop now. Thank you very much for your help.
I have the number. It's up to 510 live work units in buildings 4 and 5.
So, and there were did we have 701, 2, and 3?
720 in the other 3 buildings. So of the 5 buildings together.
Okay. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Liz and Andy. A related comment is, it's a comment about this area is home to various East African immigrant Muslim businesses. Has there been outreach to those business owners in this specified location? And what's happening to these businesses?
So we have, actually, Claire and I went out and walked around, and we talked to all the business owners or managers of businesses within the study area. We tried to hit all of them, the ones that were open that we could get to, and maybe 1 or 2 that we didn't reach. And we're not finished with our outreach phase. This meeting is one part of it, and we'll be continuing over the next month. And so we've tried to make sure that all the business owners that would be impacted by this plan are aware.
Let's see, another comment about, is there a need for more housing? There's traffic, being overwhelmed with traffic. One suggestion, maybe going higher, but with a smaller footprint. and interest in the green spaces that could be connected. And a question, is there a concerted effort to optimize the function of that green space for prospective recreation or just as general open space?
There's several elements to that question. I think during the planning, we can make general recommendations to ensure that any redevelopment provides open spaces on site within the development. And then during the zoning process, when a developer submits more specific plans for the development, that's when we have those conversations about the design of a park space. Will it be passive green space, or will it have a playground and that sort of thing? That comes later in the zoning process, not necessarily as part of the planning process.
I see more comments about walkability and how dangerous it is to walk in that area. And I think we've talked about staff has identified that the importance of that for this area. So that would be a key consideration. I think there had been an earlier question about noise. That was noise associated with, I thought cars, but here a question is, what about the increased noise? And I'm not sure if I'm understanding, would that be from the construction or the new development? So I don't know if somebody can clarify if there are any additional noise concerns. Sunset Manor residents are concerned about parking. And then what determines how high the buildings can be? Andy, perhaps you could talk about what determines that.
So the comprehensive plan typically sets a maximum limit for building heights, or if not for heights, then for density. So how much square footage could be built on a parcel. So whatever is recommended in the plan, that would be what determines the building heights. And in this case, the study that we're doing, the Board of Supervisors has directed staff to look at a maximum building height of 14 stories. We may take all these comments in, do our analysis and evaluations, and determine that 14 stories is appropriate, or we may determine that a different height limit is appropriate. But that's part of this process. Clara, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, that's
Does that
good.
cover it?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm trying to read to see, there are a lot of comments that have been brought to light in the discussion. Let's see, spillover traffic, Sunset Manor, spillover parking, I should say.
So Zena has responded to your question about noise. She's saying when you have more people in a location, then you have more noise.
Okay.
So it's part of living in a densely populated area. With regard to noise from traffic, there's guidelines for how to construct the new buildings to protect the people living in those buildings from the additional traffic noise. But if you're talking about just people out and about, that's just the vibrancy of an urban living environment, I would say.
There's a comment about the cost. It says, are Food Star developers planning on $1 million condos for this area? So I think we had talked about the different types, housing types, or rental for sale, or possibility. I don't think we would know what the cost would be.
But we can say that the county has an affordable and workforce housing policy that would be implemented. So any new residential buildings would have to include some affordable and workforce affordable housing units.
Yes. somebody had mentioned the school bus. So that'll be a part of the comments we're taking back. Maybe we can try to understand what's happening with school buses there on Seminary. And hopefully in the chat, people have noticed we've added some contact information, and Andy will close the meeting with more ways that you can reach us. A question isn't just about contacting us, but where to report on these types of issues. I think that this chat has been extensive, and so we're going to need to spend some time summarizing this and putting that together. And where we would be able to put it is on the study webpage, where we would summarize the outcome of this meeting. So that would be the place to follow this project and to see where we post the outcome of this meeting.
Right. So we are coming up upon our time limit, and I just want to thank everyone for your participation. We had over 80 people, and almost 70 of you have lasted until the very end here. So I really appreciate your joining this Zoom call, listening to us, asking your questions, sharing your concerns. Nothing will fall through the cracks. I'm going to take all this back to the office. We're going to make sure we capture all the comments from the chat. Those will be saved, and we'll work on responses to your questions and summarizing what we've heard tonight. As Clara said, we will post that on the website. A recording of this meeting will also be posted online. And again, this meeting is not the end of the public engagement. You can send me an email. You can visit the website and fill out the survey. You can call the planning office if you want to talk to someone, and either I or someone else will talk to you if I'm not available. And I think that's everything. We do want to hear from you, and we do want to make sure we've captured all of your comments and concerns, and we will do that.
One question, will the video be available for access later? And I believe we are recording the meeting so that it can be posted. It might take us a few days to get that on our YouTube page, but the link will be on the study website.
Yes. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if I've done everything correctly and the technology is working, we will have the video in English and in Spanish. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming, and let's keep talking, and send me your written comments if you would like. Thank you. Oh, yes, I can hear you. Well, the Zoom setting allows me to record both an audio tracks. So there will be an English track and a Spanish audio track file. My understanding of the way Zoom works now, I clicked everything. I did a test earlier today, And it shows up in the cloud, my saved meeting. There's the video, then there's an English track and a Spanish track. Now, how I post that to YouTube, I'm not sure. I will get help from my IT people. Yes. So, can you tell me, do you know how many people were listening to the Spanish? Are you able to see that? No, you don't know. Okay. Okay.
I'm still
Yes.
making my
Okay.
way.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your help this evening. It's nice working with you. Thank you. Okay, good night.
Andy, I'm still making my way through the chat.
Clara, should I close the meeting or do you want to talk after? I can just end the meeting now.
Yeah, and then let's touch
We
base.
can talk in Teams or we can just talk tomorrow.
Yeah, we can, if you want to find a time to debrief tomorrow morning.
Mhm. Okay.
The people who are still hanging on, if they have anything for staff.
All right, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you.
Andy, great job. Thank you.
Thanks.